Is it permitted to attend a family dinner where free mixing usually occurs? Okay. So free mixing, what we want is to understand free mixing. Does it mean just men being in the presence of women, um, or women being in the presence of men, whichever way you look at it? No, because if that was the case, then walking on the street past a group of people would be impermissible. Walking into a supermarket where there are members of the opposite gender would be impermissible. So we would understand free mixing as an environment where men and women would just be, they engage in conversation, and there's a possibility of that conversation um, ending up being, you know, going in the direction of the impermissible, where, there's some flirtation, or, details are exchanged in a way that, that are likely to lead to something haram later. That's going to be a problem. Or, where people are dressed inappropriately, and these sorts of interactions. Um, that's the impermissible element. And whenever there are people together in an environment like this, so there's the actual ruling of is a particular thing haram. That's one thing. And then we have the standard of the sharia of haya and modesty. So for example, weddings, right? A lot of people have a mixed wedding where there'll just be one hall, loads of tables, and just men and women sat there, people with their family sat there, people with their family sat there. This is going to be inappropriate, because the nature of weddings is that, people dress up, and they make themselves look attractive. And if men are sat there and then there's women there looking at each other, then the environment's not very religious, right? It's not very conducive to someone trying to maintain their religious practice. So that would, generally, that's something that shouldn't happen, right? um yeah, it really shouldn't happen. Unfortunately, it's become the norm, which is a real problem, right? So ideally, in these these sorts of situations, the men should be separate and the ladies should be separate. And out of mind, out of sight, out of mind is the principle that works here. And then but it doesn't mean that any sort of interaction is going to be impermissible. For example, people work. People go to work in an office, and is just the presence of being in a office with other people, and then a member of the opposite gender being there, is that impermissible? No, right? Being alone with someone of the opposite gender, yes, that's a khalwa. That's going to be impermissible, but not like this. So. Um, the question at hand then: is it permitted to attend a family dinner where free mixing usually occurs? If you're talking about family, like uncles, aunties, and first cousins and whatever, if the environment is one where people are sat in a room, and there is maintaining good family ties is recommended in Islam, highly, highly encouraged. Even in these situations, generally in traditional cultures, what you'd have the men sat with the men and the ladies sat with the ladies, and that's how is generally done. But if there is a situation, like say someone goes to see his auntie, right? And or she's in, she's for him to walk in, just speak to the auntie, these sorts of things, that's going to be permissible. As for a family dinner, um if it's segregated, great. If there is, say you're there, you go to your uncle's house or whatever, and his daughter's there, and if there's no impermissible interaction and no chance of an impermissible interaction, for the sake of maintaining family ties, I mean, it would be okay to be there, as long as you lower your gaze, if there's something that shouldn't be seen, and just generally acting in a way that's permissible in the Sharia. As for just sitting there and just someone going off with his first cousin, second cousin, whatever, and then just people of a similar age, or there's a potential of fitna, just sitting there chatting, cracking jokes whilst the adults are there on in their own side of the house talking, something like that. That wouldn't be permissible, right? But generally, it's best to maintain certain boundaries, right? And you can have a perfectly civil conversation, even about something that's relevant or current with, a relative or someone of the opposite gender. If it's an environment where there's no chance of anything impermissible happening, then it would be permissible. I mean, the same thing like when you're going to consider someone for marriage, you can't be alone in a room with her, right? Alone in the sense that no one can walk in. That would be a khalwa. So generally, there's like a chaperone, like a third person sat there, even just within earshot or just without us, but he can see that all the interactions are normal interactions. So something like that's fine, right? So it's best to be careful in these situations. Allah knows best.
لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله